Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of Builders and Co-Creators Group. You're welcome. I must start by apologizing about yesterday and then about today. We are again about 10 minutes late because one of us was having problems connecting. Last night we had technical issues, serious technical issues we could not resolve as you waited. So we postponed this to today. You're welcome. We hope that you had a good day. We are having to continue with the interview that we started yesterday with Miss Grace Atieno, who is a managing partner and head of design at Cubes and Container Design Limited. Grace, you're welcome. Mwangi, I cannot see Grace. There, hi Grace. I hope you had a good day today.
Yes, thank you.
Good. I will recap what you already told us yesterday. And you said the questions that I had already asked were your source of containers, and you said that your containers come from shippers and they only sell to you food grade containers. They do not sell to you anything that is has been used to ship toxic or poisonous substances. The other thing that you told us is that containers are made from what material?
From cotton steel. Cotton steel.
Yeah, that it's made from cotton steel. And what this means is that when it rusts, when the container rusts, it actually adds another layer, which is good for the container. So those are the ones that you buy. The third thing that you told us was about documentation of containers. And you were saying that containers have a unique number, sort of like a chassis engine number that is unique to every container. And you are reiterating to potential buyers to make sure that their containers are documented, because in the event that they are not documented, chances are it's been stolen with some content or without content, all right? But it means that somebody else has the documentation for it, and therefore it is stolen property. And that for anybody to own a container legally, there has to be paper trail of one container being passed over, being passed over to the next buyer. This is what you said yesterday, right? Guys, I'm having to reiterate, to summarize because we have lost time. Now, I was asking you if we need any special approvals to put up container stalls or structures.
Okay, so for approvals, the most I've not heard of any approvals apart from two counties. The first county being Bondo, which is under Siaya, and another county being Kajiado County. So for Kajiado County, you need approval for anything, be it a container house, be it a container store, or any container structure that you're planning to build up. The approval I had for Siaya was for a business permit and not necessarily for a container. Containers are considered as temporary structures and therefore they don't really need approvals per se. But if you're to use a container as a business premise, you need a permit for it as a business premise and not necessarily for the container.
That if it is you're saying that if it's a house, a domestic dwelling, then chances are you will not need any approvals because they're considered temporary structures. However, if you need it for business, a business premise, you need the business permit. Yeah. My experience, however, has been, Grace, is particularly in Siaya County. My experience has been that if you're going to put a container on top of another so that it is a storage structure, then you need approval from the county. And now you're saying that in Kajiado, you need approval. So members, if you're ever going to use containers to build a house or to put up business premises, I encourage you to visit the planning office at your county office and just check the county headquarters, check if you need any particular approvals, because I remember the experience was that we had to present sort of an architectural design that shows how one is going to sit on top of another, if it actually sits right on top of your property and not on the road reserve, and also that it's going to be safe enough if you're putting one container on top of another. So pretty much, the need, I'm reiterating the need to check with your county office to see if you need any approvals. Yeah. So Grace, what is the procedure of construction? What if today I want the kind of housing for domestic dwelling as you shared with us, some of the pictures that you shared with us, what is the procedure of putting it up? Please walk us from the time I buy containers from you or the time you give me the design.
First, when you want to do a container home, you first need to know the size of house you're looking at and the design that you're looking at, even before you buy your containers. It's from the design that you'll know the number of containers that you'll need and the orientation of containers. That way you'll know if maybe at some point you will be able to save a container or two, because you'll find sometimes you have a design that might need about 3 containers, but from the way you're going to place it on ground, you will just need 2 and maybe a space in between where you can use the cutouts from the containers that you already have to seal it up and look like you have 3 containers. So first you need to know the design that you are going to work with. Our company has a team of designers who will walk you through your idea and complete to a drawing that you can work with. After that, you go to the purchase of containers. Now, for construction of a house, it can take between a month to 2 months, depending on the size of container that you're going to get. So if it's a container that will be done, if it's a house that will be done in 140-foot container or rather one container, you can do the whole process from our yard. That means the whole process of construction will be done in a period of 1 month and it will be done at our yard. The only thing that will be done on site is basically the groundwork and the roof work. But when it comes to interior fittings, everything all up to tiling, it will be done at our yard and the container will be delivered on site as a complete unit. However, if you're joining containers, if you're having more than one container, then we do 50% of the works at our site and we do the other 50% of the works at your site, because you're going to join 2 containers. That will mean we will have to do extra welding and we'll need to do some finishing up once the containers get to site. So things like tile works will have to be done on site. And that's what takes up to 2 months.
So Grace, you're saying that if I need to join containers, then half of the work will be done on site and the other half will be done on at your yard. My question is, can they, because when you're joining containers, there are a lot of additional welding that you require, right? So does this mean that if my site has no power, you cannot join containers for me on the ground?
Now that is a question of the company you're working with. As a company, we have a generator that we use on sites where we don't have electricity. So that becomes our headache and not yours. We will use our generator to do the extra welding and all that. But say you're working with a company that don't have extras like generators, then it becomes important for your site to have electricity for me or for that particular company to finish off works at your site.
So you're saying that, if somebody is going with the Cubes and Container Design Limited, which is your organization, then the logistics about electricity and connectivity, stuff like that, is your headache. Yeah. So members, just so you know, I don't know if it's going to cost more if you use a company that has a generator and your site has no power. But what is to take home here is that if you're going to use more than one container, then the half of the work is going to have to be done on site, which means there's going to be additional welding, which means that you need power, either from a generator or from the mains. So choose a company that works for you. If you do not have electricity, if you have electricity, I guess anyone can join them, for any of the companies can join them for you. So Grace, yeah, to walk us through this, you're saying that I will come and I will say that I need a 3-bedroom house, and then you will give me. Do you have various designs in your sort of album that I can pick from, or do I tell you whether I need 1 or 2 bathrooms and then you create it for me?
We, considering you have an interior designer in the team, we can guide you through. We can show you what we've done previously. You can go through our designs, see what you like, and then maybe pick a thing or two from what we've done. But then again, we can customize designs to suit you as an individual, because people have different tastes. And we also don't prefer copy pasting designs. So we will work with what works best for you.
And 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 do you charge for that design? Do you charge additional for the design?
Yes, initially we used not to charge, but from experience, we found that being the only company that has the only container company that has indoor designers or in-house designers, we found clients would come, they'll want a design, we'll give them designs. Later on, we see our own design being done by another company. So we started charging for this. But once that design has been actualized by our same company or our own company, then the cost of design becomes part of the cost of construction.
We get it. So you charge
Mm.
it. You charge if before somebody actually commits. But if they commit and they buy from you and they're building from they're building with you, or you're building for them, then that cost becomes part of the construction cost. That's what you're saying, right?
Mm.
So so then, Grace, so then you're saying that construction will take between a month and 2 months, depending on how many containers somebody is using. All right. Okay. So the next thing that I would like us to share with our members um, is about the storied malls or the storied structures. Yeah. Grace, your camera is moving a lot. I think I can only see half of your head. No, I can see you now. so
Okay,
so
okay.
the question is, where how can you build a multi-storied container structure, say for business, and claim that it is safe? Containers are not welded on top of each other. They actually sit on top of each other, right? So can you explain to us the safety measures where we can actually use containers to create stalls and, like stack them up so that it's a storied sort of structure? What are the safety regulations or measures that you take?
First, when containers are meant to be used on sea. So when they're being used on sea, they're actually locked. There's a lock people use to lock storied containers, and that way you can go up to 7 story high. But when a container is sitting on ground, it's actually stable. You can sit one on top of another without doing extras. But in case there'll be movement, say you're not so sure if your ground is firm enough, you can weld the ends. Once you've stacked them, you can weld the ends. That is if you're going for up to 2 stories. If you're going up to 3 or more stories, then you'll have to use the same locks that shipping lines use on the sea to seal up containers to up to 7 story high. Then you will need to use that same mechanism for if you're doing 3 or 4 stories high.
So you're saying, Grace, that if I'm going 1 story, like ground and first floor, then one container can sit on the other with no problem. They sort of click and lock into each other. Yeah. However, if I'm going to third, fourth floors, then we will need the mechanism that is used when containers are at sea to lock them. Now, do you provide that? Do you provide that locking mechanism?
Now, the locking mechanism isn't found locally. If you to need one, it will have to be imported, mainly from China, the same place where the containers are being made from. but you don't have them locally. And since we started practicing, we've not actually found an experience where we've had to go 3 or 4 stories high, so we haven't really needed it.
No, well, that is from your experience, but what does your expertise tell you that if somebody goes 3 story, are you saying then that you cannot help them? Because I believe you should be able to help them, and you should be able to be sure to assure them that that container, the third floor, the second floor, is safe.
If you're going 3 or 4 stories high, then we will have to import the mechanism from China to help us secure it further. But the
All
same
right.
mechanism
I can't hear you. The same mechanism.
the mechanism isn't found locally.
Okay. All right. So tell us about the grounds then, because when you stack 2 or 3 containers on the ground, chances are that ground could be weak, or the containers could be too heavy and it begins to sink. How do you make sure that it stays on the ground firmly?
Now, we also do groundworks. We do ground preparation for our clients, but we also advise in case a client has someone who can do the groundwork for them, we also advise the client on how to go about it. But first, the ground has to be properly done before you can sit any container, be it 1 story, 2 story, 3 story high. Your ground has to be done properly to be
What
able
is
to.
proper?
Depending on how your site is, we have 3 types of groundwork that we do. The first one being pillars, and the other one would be a proper foundation, excavation, backfilling, putting the white ends and all that, a properly done foundation. I wouldn't really say exactly how because we have an extra person in the team who does our groundwork. So he'll be the one who'll advise you on what to do depending on the weight you're planning to carry with your containers.
All right, because I believe that this is a structural engineer's work, where you must tell them how far up you want to stack the containers, and then they will help you determine the strength of your pillars. Because the pillars, members, Grace has explained that either you do a slab, like you excavate and you build and you backfill, as if you want to build a house. I think that's really expensive. But the alternative that Grace has also alluded to is where you actually build pillars. Grace, do you want to explain how the weight of the container is pretty much at the corners and in the middle, so that is where you want to build the pillars? Do you want to explain that, Grace? You're the professional.
All right. So from how the container has been done, the most of the weight of the container is carried from the 4 corners. That's where the weight has been spread to. So if you're doing pillars, depending on the size of container you're working with, you'll have to do, say, a 40 foot will be carried by 6 pillars, a 20 foot will be carried by 4 pillars. That means from the first to the second and the third pillar on one side, it should be an interval of about 20 feet. So from the first pillar to the second, you leave a gap of 20 feet. Then from the second to the third, you leave a gap of 20 feet. From what we do as a company, if you're to do a pillar, we do a pillar of about, the minimum size of a pillar we can do is 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet. But depending on the weight you're going to carry, and the weight is determined by the materials you're going to put there and the use of the container, you can go up to 2 feet by 2 feet. And when you're doing a pillar, you need to make sure your pillar gets to the hardcore or the maram, and you can't have it any shallower. You can't have it any shallower. So sometimes you'll find you'll have to go 3 to 4 feet deep, sometimes
Yep.
5. Mm.
And it's got all those tumors, guys. It is like building a floating house. So it actually requires proper excavation at the corners. Grace has mentioned that you have a 40-foot container would be supported by 6 pillars, I'll say 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet. And they've got to be 6 so that you are stable. And, even if you stack them up, there'll be no container leaning on one side or one side sinking. And when you excavate, you have to get to the hardcore. just like your regular foundation, only this time it is pillars. Yeah, no shortcuts because people's lives are involved. So we have spoken about safety measures on the ground. There's other safety measure we've spoken about is the containers locking when they're stacked on each other. Is there any other safety measure?
Yes, there is
Yeah,
one. A
yeah.
container is a metal box, and at times people go or do shortcuts when it comes to wiring. If you do a shortcut when it comes to wiring, then you're endangering the occupants of that particular container. So your wiring should be well done. It should go through the conduit pipes. You can't just have naked wires going through the container. In case of any short, you're risking the users of the containers. So your wiring should also be well done. If possible, ask for documentations and confirmation that the electrician working on your container is certified.
So at your establishment, Grace, I know that you have a structural engineer who will advise on the how to prepare the ground, and you are the designer alongside other designers. Do you have an electrician in your team?
We have electricians, we have welders, we have gypsum guys, we have tilers, we have plumbers, we have everyone on board for different purposes, and all of them are qualified.
Okay. Mwangi, do you want to take the next questions, or shall I carry on? Mwangi?
Salin, just proceed.
Okay, all right. So Grace, about insulation, I know that you have told us about, how to insulate, so that the wires are not exposed, because if there's a short and we're in a metal box, everybody gets conducted through, if you know what I'm saying. You can get electrocuted. So it is extremely important, members, that when you're building a container house or stall or shop, that your electrification is done very, very well, so that electric wiring is done very well, so that there's no accident. Grace, what is on the floor when somebody buys a container? What's on the floor of the container? What material is it? Is it still metallic?
No, all containers come with wooden floor, and it depends. You'll find others with bamboo wooden floor, and you'll have others with MDF wooden floor, but all floors on a container are treated. So when you're doing your unit, when you're converting your unit, you can decide to enhance. You can decide to do tiling, you can decide to do laminates, you can decide to polish the original container floor, you can decide to do any other kind of flooring that you prefer. But the container comes with its own original floor, which is wooden.
I see.
I
I
see.
see.
I
Okay.
see.
So
Okay.
so
So,
you have told us about electric works. Tell us about plumbing and sewerage. If I'm building a container house, what are some of the things that I must consider in designing or in purchasing for my plumbing and sewerage works?
So, as a company, we cover for every works that has or will be done within the container. That means all the electrical works and its fittings, cabinetry, plumbing, and all that. But it's a personal preference and decision that we prefer the client to cover external works. That means external electrical wiring, external plumbing, sewerage, and all that. Then we connect whatever we've done from the container to what is existing on ground. If you're connecting it to the biodigester, or you're connecting it to the sewer line, or you're connecting it to any other kind of sewerage you might prefer to use. But our works, we specialize in works within the container.
All right, which
all
then
right,
means
which then means
Mhm.
Grace, that I can only do all these things. So for instance, if you're already working on my house at the yard and you tell me that it will be brought next month, I then need to begin work on, say, the biodigester now, so that when you come and you place it, the connection is finalized. Okay. So
okay.
guys,
So, guys,
there are reasons why people build container houses, and and there are people who have said that it is more expensive than concrete. Maybe, maybe not, and Grace will tell us. But then there are different reasons. Perhaps you have land somewhere that you can't build on yet, and later on you might want to use that container housing, so you choose to build it there. Or there are people who want to stay here for another 15 years, and they can hire land to place a container house where their families can stay, and then when the lease ends, they leave. So, I've seen comments like, oh, container wachia, goods, oh, nyumba ni brick and mortar. Kweni wapole, those who think so, because there are many reasons why even you are probably living in a wooden house, where somebody else is living in a mabati house, another one is living in a brick house, and yet another is living in a stone house. So it's good to have an open mind, rather than dismissing these options. In this group, we give you options, and then you choose, and we give you indications of pricing, and then you choose. As long as it is within our space, we will share it right here. We share the cheapest and we will share the most expensive, because the choice ultimately is yours as the buyer or as the builder. Okay, so Grace, you've already told us how you do electrical wiring. You've told us the procedure of sewerage and plumbing. Tell us about insulation. Is there any insulation in this containers so that the house is not either too hot or too cold?
Yes. Initially, as a company, we used to use a material called styrofoam, but styrofoam had its own pros and cons, and so we stopped using it. Currently, we're using a material called fiberglass insulation. It's also called blanket insulation. Others know it as blanket insulation. So let me just take you through what we do. If you're going to do insulation and padding to your house, that means converting it and make the inside look different from what a container unit would be. Then it would mean after the container, we do the fiberglass insulation. Then after the fiberglass insulation, we cover it with gypsum boarding. So we do double insulation, because gypsum boarding is also good in insulation. We do double insulation. With this insulation, we make sure that the temperature within the container is just as good as one, say, in a brick and mortar kind of space, and you don't get the extremes. You don't get the extreme heat or extreme cold.
Okay, so tell us the disadvantages of styrofoam, because I know people who may not buy from you and who might buy from others may still be sold styrofoam. So it would be nice for people to know the disadvantages of styrofoam and why they should avoid it, if at all.
Okay, from experience, maybe I say it as a story. Once I do a container, it doesn't mean, actually my work stops at me delivering the container to your site. I wouldn't really dictate how you'll handle it. I don't know if you'll do any extras to it, if you'll do any extra welding to it. Now for styrofoam, for it to adhere to the container, we use conta. Conta in itself is like a fuel. Styrofoam, if you heat it even without the conta, it melts quite fast. So if you add conta to it, it actually burns. When it burns and you've already done your electrical wiring between the gypsum and container, you're risking having your wirings exposed. This means after a while, you will start having shocks once you touch the container. So from this, we stopped using it, and now we use fiberglass insulation. Why we use fiberglass insulation? It does not catch fire at all. We've done a number of experiments on site. When you visit us on site, we have both. We have the styrofoam and we have the fiberglass, and we show you physically what we mean and why we stopped using the styrofoam insulation.
So then the styrofoam insulation is the fiberglass insulation is another safety sort of mechanism, guys, because just to reiterate what Grace has said, There are people who still sell and insulate using styrofoam. The problem with styrofoam is its installation. First, they use contact glue. If you don't know what contact is, that is glue. It is glue that almost lights up like fuel. So if you use it, styrofoam as it is very flammable. It's very easy to burn. So if you use it with contact, and then later on, after your house has been placed and they're gone, and 2 years down the line you think, I think I should put another sort of sink there, and then you bring fire and then you begin to weld, and these things melt. They may not burn, but then the heat from them might melt the insulation for your electrical wiring, thereby exposing you and exposing your container, a house, to electric shock. So really, guys, a number of people will still suggest styrofoam because I think it's cheaper, but I need you to know, because it is our role here to tell you that it is more dangerous for the reasons that I've already given. So go for fiberglass if you can, fiberglass insulation, and then with a final layer of gypsum, because then it is double insulated. Grace, must they go for the gypsum, or does the fiberglass finish look just look good enough?
If you use fiberglass or any kind of insulation, even with styrofoam, you'll still need to cover that up. So you can either use gypsum, you can either use MDF, you can use blockboard, whatever works for you, but you'll have to cover that up.
I see. So then after the fiberglass, they still need to cover. Now you will determine, your money will determine what you can afford. You can use MDF boards, you can use blockboard, you can use plywood boarding, you can use gypsum board, kulingana na mfuko wako. So after, as long as it is safe, anything wooden will be safe. Grace, everyone wants to know the cost of a container. Give us the cost of a container without any design or any what do you call it, any fabrication. Then give us the cost of fabricating, like the kiosk with the roller shutter. And then perhaps you tell us what other costs go in to buying a container or a container stall before we go into the housing part.
Because I'm not the only, or we are not the only company that sells this container, I'll just give projections. Different companies have different costings. So for a plain 40-foot container, you will find it at about a genuine one. And by a genuine one, I mean one with documentations, a clean one, something that you can actually fabricate and use for something else. So you'll get it between 300 to 320,000. That is for a 40-foot. For a 20-foot, you'll get it between 180 to 210,000. That is for plain containers. Now, when it comes to fabrication, again, different companies have different costings. When you talk of stalls, you have two types of stalls. The first stall is the cutout stall, where we use the piece that we've cut from that container as the opening. We put it back as a door. And then you have another one that we call roller shutter doors, where we use the normal pull down, pull up rollers as doors. So for cutout doors, they range between, for a 40-foot, and that is 5 shops, they range between 500 to 530. For roller shutter doors, 5 doors, they range between 530 to 560, depending on the company.
So that's the cost of the container fabricated, say, into 5 shops with roller shutter doors. It comes to how much?
500? Between 530 to 560 if you're doing roller shutter doors. If you're doing cutout doors, it ranges between 500 to 530, depending on the company. And this cost covers the cost of container. It covers electrical wiring and fittings. It covers spray painting inside and out.
Yes. Okay. So guys, you have had the cost per container. And this is when it is still at the yard. Grace, There is the transportation of containers. That one you must tell people, because that's where people just walk away. And you need to tell us why transportation of containers is so costly. So for instance, taking a container, guys, from Nairobi, the yard at Nairobi to Kisumu, a 40-foot container, it's like how much, Grace?
Transport alone is 60,000. Transport and offloading is 120,000.
And what do you mean by
What do you
offloading?
mean?
Transport and offloading, we mean we use different trucks. And the truck that we use for transport and offloading is the same one that will load itself at our yard when it's loading the container. Once it gets on site, it will offload. So it becomes easier for you. It has its own crane. But in case you have access to a forklift near your site, it's cheaper to work with a flatbed and they'll charge you just transport. Then once it gets to site, you organize your own offloading. Maybe for a forklift per hour, they can charge you between 10,000 to 15,000, depending on the area. In Nairobi, they can charge you 5,000.
Yeah. So Grace, you are telling us that assuming that if I want a 40-foot container fabricated into 5 shops, for instance, with the roller shutter, transported to Kisumu and offloaded on site at Kisumu, I'm looking at about 730,000, right? Thereabout, that sort of container with those 5 shops. I bought it from you, you have painted it, you have done the paint work and the wiring work, loading and offloading. It's going to cost me about 720, 730. That's what you're saying.
650. 530
Ah,
plus 120. About
okay.
650.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
650.
Yes.
So guys, I always say that if you have a property or a piece of property where you want to place shops using containers, if you are only doing the ground floor, it is not any cheaper. The cost of container stalls or container malls reduces as you go up, as you stack them up, because the same pillars will contain the top floor, so there is no extra cost there. The other thing is that then you have many shops on one little piece of land. So and so if you're going to go ground floor only, perhaps not, but if you want to get value for your money, I would recommend that you stack them up so that so that you have many shops on one little property. So Grace, tell us about transportation of the housing. Wait, before you tell us about transportation of the housing, how much does a house cost? A regular house, say 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, like the ones you shared with us. Mwangi, maybe you can show us the pictures. Mwangi? Yes, this. Yeah, this is a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, Grace? Hello?
That is a 3-bedroom house, but it doesn't have its own toilet and bathroom. That was done separately. So you just have the living space, you have 3 bedrooms and a kitchen.
All right. Assuming that I want to build one like that, 3-bedroom without any toilet and bathroom inside, because perhaps I will have a pit latrine outside or done separately on the outside. How much will that cost me?
Of that one, I'll tell you the cost of that one because it was done in Narok. I think about some kilometers from Narok, and the transport was a little bit expensive. But for that house, it costed 1.8. That includes cost of container, transportation to site, groundwork, interior finishes, electrical wiring, tiling on the floor, cabinetry in the kitchen, and spray painting, plus the roofing. So that was 1.8.
Okay. And if I wanted to build that, but with a toilet and bathroom inside, you're therefore saying the cost would come to about 2 million?
The challenge would be out of 3 20-feet containers, the space is not enough to have a 3-bedroom house and a toilet and bathroom.
Okay.
Mm.
So So then it would mean that I buy another extra container, but that becomes then too expensive. But there are some cuts that you're getting out of this container, like the one into the doors and everything. Those ones can be used to weld a toilet and bathroom room out there, Grace. Now that's why we need you as a designer.
It's just that that particular client insisted on 3 containers. The same house could have been done with two 20-foot containers. That means one container on one end, another container on the other, and then you leave a gap in between. So this gap would have been sealed by the cutouts that we create from the containers.
Correct. Okay, so guys, you get the approximate cost, yeah, you get the approximate cost, and that includes transport. Yeah. So Grace, one towards the end of our discussion, and I wanted to ask you what you require on site before you actually go to install. I know that you do part of the work, like when you're building a domestic dwelling, a house at the yard, and then before you come to site, what do you need me to have done?
So my scope is discussed. We discuss my scope of work with you, but ideally, regardless of who does it, ideally I need to have the groundwork already done. So if it's a project that will take, say, 2 months, you can start on extras, say like the biodigester. Once I land on site, a month is enough for you to finalize on 1, 2, 3 things. But if it's a container that we do in completion from our yard, I need the groundwork to be ready. And if you're doing a biodigester, I need that ready too, so that when I drop my container, it's all about fixing it.
I see. So, but what you mean by groundwork is if there's any sewerage that is being planned on the ground. So when you arrive, you just fix it with the one you have done for the house. If there is any, like if they're putting it on a slab or on those pillars, it needs to be ready. Guys, by the way, when you put a slab or pillars, it needs to be cured for a month. Every day watering. I'm telling you this from experience. Every day water, it has to be cured properly, like you would cure a regular foundation, because that's going to be a dwelling and you don't want any houses sinking. So please, you need to factor that in when you're doing this. Do it early, cure it for 3 weeks, if not longer. And then when Grace comes, she can just place and tie the fittings and leave you to your dwelling. Now, Grace, how long can a container house last once you place it on site with average care, people living in it, like we live in our regular houses? How long can it last?
So the response to this question would be an estimation, mainly because this technology of containers hasn't been in existence for so long. So we can't say with authority 100% that this will last for this long. So our estimation is done by the normal container span life or lifespan. So for a container, you can use it on sea depending on how you use it. So for say about 30 years. Once it is off sea, say on normal ground, normal climate, it can last up to 15 years with regular maintenance. It takes you 10 years for you to start worrying about maintenance. And by maintenance, I mean painting, rusts, and any other improvements you might need to do to your container. It's after the 10-year mark, 10 to 15-year mark, depending on how you use it.
Okay, so you're saying that once you install for me, that I can only use that house for 15 years before I begin to worry about maintenance.
And this math is picked from what we know from a container. If you're to do a container and just place it on site, you're giving it about 10, 15 years before you start worrying about the rusts, before you start worrying about the maintenance. Now, when we convert a container to a dwelling, we are improving the container. That means you're adding life to it. So this 10 to 15 is if, because it is also possible, we've had clients who would want the container with its original color, nothing done to it. So that is the kind of client who will have to take about 10-15 years to worry about rusts and repainting and all that. Once you've done extras to a container, you can now give it a lifespan of about 5 to 10 years more. So about 25 years for you to start thinking of repainting your whole house, for you to start thinking of doing a cover up. And then there is also another thing that we might not have covered. Apart from spray painting the exterior of a container, we also do cladding. If you do cladding, now the lifespan is dependent on whatever material you used for your container, for your exterior. If you used tiling, the lifespan of that container will be as long as the tile is still in good condition. You're talking 50 years, you're talking, I don't know how many years. But if you're using wood, maybe after 2-3 years, if it was not well treated, you will start worrying about redoing the wood cladding.
I understand. I understand. Therefore, guys, don't get it wrong. It is not like once your house is installed, in 15 years it is gone. What she's saying is that in 15 years, you need now to start a repainting. You need to start checking whether the welding is still proper. So it's not like after 15 years you demolish and buy another one for 1.88. It's so it's when you begin to start maintenance or worry about maintenance. Now, once you maintain it, it takes you another several years. And as Grace is saying, part of the value addition that they do is cladding. So depending on what you use to clad it, it can last longer, right? So cladding, guys, those maybe people who don't understand that terminology is when you use a different material to sort of cover the exterior, so that it looks like a stone house, for instance, whereas really it is steel, it's cotton steel. Yeah. So Grace, Mwangi, do you have a question before I ask Grace for this
Yes,
offer? Go,
yes,
go on.
I have a question for Grace. Now, when you do container houses, I know you have to carve out for the windows and the doors, maybe also for ventilation areas. Now, from what I understand from a container is that a container actually structurally is actually self-sustaining. So once you cover up the doors and the windows, does it that weaken the container? And in that case, how do you approach such a scenario? Do you have reinforcement for containers once you cover up the doors?
Okay, stability of a container once you convert it is 100% solely dependent on the company you pick to work on that container. It is from the company that you will know if the kind of openings you require in your container is good or bad. And if it's too much, it's the company that will advise you on if you need to do a reinforcement or if it's not applicable at all. That's 100% dependent on the company that you settle with. Say you do a container home and you're cutting a whole face of a container, then you'll need to do extra reinforcements. If you don't do extra reinforcements, after a while, the container will start caving in from the roof. And that would be an information you should have been told by your contractor during design stage. Then you can tilt or you can twitch the design to work with your budget. If your budget allows extra reinforcements, well and good. If your budget does not allow that, then you minimize the number of cuttings you do to a container.
I think what Mwangi is asking is almost the most important thing since this discussion began. Really, the fact that that a container is self-sustaining in terms of strength and stability, and therefore, if you manipulate it too much, cutting one window here, putting one eaves there, or cutting a big door and another one on the side, you are messing the inherent stability of that vessel, and therefore you might need to get additional reinforcement. Now, this is why it is important and it is very beneficial to work with a company that has teams that will advise you on such things. Like somebody telling you, you already have enough windows. If you cut another window, you will spend money to reinforce. And Grace, I don't know if you have that in your team, somebody who will advise on the optimal openings that somebody can make on a container vessel.
Yes. That is also attached to the design. During our design, something that makes us different when we are designing, we're not just like any other regular interior designers. We've learned to manipulate these containers, we've learned the characteristics of these containers. So from our designs, we know what works and what doesn't work. Not every design will work with a container. So it's from the design stage that we'll advise you on what works and what doesn't work with containers. You can't just copy paste a plan from I don't know wherever to come and implement it on a container. It's not possible.
I see. So Grace, do your container housing or stalls have a guarantee, a warranty? Once you check that my ground is properly prepared and my surface is good and you install, is there any guarantee? Like after how long can I call you back to say kuna mali in a leak, for instance?
Okay. In case of any poor workmanship, you will see it almost immediately. Say if the welding was not done well, once the container gets to site, you will see it almost immediately. So we give a period of about 1 year in case of anything. Some things you might have missed, and we will come to site to repair whatever is from as a result of poor workmanship, because you're humans. We might have missed a thing or two, so that will come and cover. But after 1 year, and sometimes even immediately, if we find damage to containers that is not as a result of our work, we will cover it, but at an extra cost from the client. The client will cover, we will foot the bill.
But why would the client foot the bill if you are the one who sold them the container?
What I mean is, say I've done a house, I've covered it with gypsum. Then I come see a very big dent on the wall. I can't cover it just because I used gypsum. Because treating or handling gypsum is different from if you're to handle a brick and mortar house. Something that I will advise you during my construction and during the design stage, that you cannot handle gypsum the same way you'll handle a brick and mortar wall. So if you call me back to come and fit a hole in your wall, that is not as a result of poor workmanship. So I will cover it, but at your cost. But if you call me to tell me my container is leaking, that's upon me to come and correct, because I sold you a container that is leaking.
Got it. Wangi, do you have any other questions?
Yes, I think maybe something I haven't seen even in the images that shared with us. I want to ask about now roofing. I've seen you have the ones that you have shared with us is just flat. So what happens when I want to use decker? What happens when I want a pitched roof with the containers? How will that go? Will go about that?
When it comes to roofing, at the end of the day, it's your pocket that determines what you use for your roofing. But if you're using one container, it is not 100% necessary unless it's just your preference. Containers have self drainage. You don't need a roof over it if it's just one container. But if you're draining two containers, because of that drainery in the middle, you'll have to do a roof. Now, the kind of roof and the design of the roof you want us to do, that's dependent on your budget.
Okay. Wangi, any other questions?
No, I think I'm good. I don't have any other question from Grace.
Okay, so Grace, this year, and now after this, perhaps you'll get quite some inquiries, and I would like to know if our members from this group would be getting some special offer from you. As always, if they confirm by end of year, we have 4 months to go, and I mean three months to go pretty much, and I would like to know if they make a commitment before end of year, would you please give them a discount? And what discount are you giving on a 40-foot container or on a 20-foot container? Please. Sorry, we can't hear you.
I can only give an offer on standard kind of products, say like stalls, like plain containers. But when it comes to container housings, then that we can discuss depending on your design. For containers, plain containers, we are selling a 40-foot currently at market price 300,000, but we can do delivery at half price. Delivery within Nairobi of a 40-foot container is 25,000. We can do delivery for at half price. For a 20-foot, we are selling it at 190,000 with free delivery within Nairobi.
Excellent. That's good. But
Excellent.
outside
That's good.
Nairobi,
But outside Nairobi,
can you give a discount for outside Nairobi?
We're working on something that we will share maybe once it has materialized. Then we are able to reduce the cost of containers and transportation to a certain percentage.
So you're saying that if somebody comes to you and they are willing to work with you, whether for a domestic dwelling or for container stalls, that you are open to giving them offers. Excellent. So your contact is on the screen. The contact, guys, for Grace or for Cubes and Container Designs Limited is on the screen right now. It is 0721 642 215. Again, this is Grace's work line, so please use it for the right reasons. If you have any further questions, you may call Grace and ask. But other than that, Grace, we want to take this opportunity to thank you we want to thank you for showing up a second day. Thank you for creating time. Thank you for giving us this information. If you have further inquiries from members, we shall reach out to you and we should be able to get answers from you. So have a good evening. Yes, Grace wants to say something.
We do something very unique. Apart from photos on our Facebook and Instagram and whatnot, we upload videos of our projects on YouTube. So because sometimes things like houses, I can't take clients every now and then to a client's house. Once the client has moved in, we managed to be able to take videos and video tours of our projects. So if you go to YouTube and just type in Cubes and Containers Design Kenya, you will find videos of our projects, you'll find videos of our houses, even the videos of houses you've just shared, you'll be able to see it on YouTube. So if you're willing, you can please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll get updates of videos and everything we do.
Okay. Grace, somebody is
Mm-hmm.
If you build a container here, can you send it to a country like Uganda or Rwanda and Burundi, Tanzania, Arusha? Can you ship it there?
Yes, we've got a lot of inquiries on that, but just the way it's hard for us to ship in other parts of Kenya, transport becomes a hindrance when it comes to other parts of the country or other parts of East Africa, say Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania. It's possible for us to work from here and transport it to that side. But they'll feel the pinch of transportation. The transport will be quite expensive.
And are there any taxes when you cross the borders?
So if you give you transport rates, that's covered in transport.
I see. Okay, so it is possible, except that the buyer or the builder will incur an additional cost, which according to you is a bit exorbitant in transportation and duty. Yeah. Okay, Grace. We will let you go now. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for the information. And if you get inquiries from members of our group, please be kind to them. Give them discounts because you're one of us. Give us good deals because just because we are members of Builders and Co-Creators. Yeah. So we will let you go even as we do some housekeeping in our group with our members, or you can watch in the background. Thank you for showing up. God bless you and God bless Cubes and Container Designs Limited. Have a good evening. Now, members, that is all about container and container building. But before we go, as always, two things. Actually, I think three this time. Our contacts are on on the screen in case you want to share with us your story, Mwangi's and mine, so you can call either, and we will be able to confer and give you a way forward. Secondly, if you want to book advertising space, or if you want to sponsor these shows with your product or with your company or with your service, please call us and we'll be able to give you the rates, and we'll also be able to give you what you get out of the investment that you put in. Thirdly, all these videos will go to the YouTube channel. I need you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Builders and Co-Creators. Please subscribe, type Builders and Co-Creators. And on this very thread, I need you to do something. Much as you're about to say bye, take a screenshot of your subscribed page, Builders and Co-Creators, and post it on this thread. Tomorrow itself, I am going to randomly choose, and I will be giving gifts to 10 people. 10 of you will randomly be chosen, and I will be sending you a gift on your cell phone. You know what gifts will come on a cell phone. It's either M-Pesa or airtime or something like that. But it will be something that you appreciate. So please click, subscribe, and take a screenshot and post it here. Other than that, members, we cannot reiterate how sorry we are about the technical hitch yesterday. Thank you for showing up again today. Tune in again day after tomorrow. That will be Thursday for a brand new show, the 8th edition of the Builders Baraza. And we'll be talking to somebody who can tell you what you need to look out for when you're buying land in the city or outside the city, the things that you need to watch out for so you are not conned, usioshwe. So keep well, have a blessed midweek and the rest of the week, and God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.
Celine, something else maybe you have missed out is on Thursday we have a guy who is going to talk about land on matters land. So we also have another group for land related content. We'll be sharing in the thread also. So we'll tell our viewers to actually be able go and join in that group. You'll be able to see even more and more land related content about even lawyers discussing content. Yeah. So thank you guys. Yeah, thank you guys. Have a good evening.
Yeah. Find a group. The sister group is called Mwangi, Chasing the Title Deed, and join.
Yes.
And mix with people and share ideas about land and see what land is where. And we'll bring somebody here on Thursday at 8:30 to tell you more about that group and about what you need to look out for when you're buying land or leasing land, what the government says, what the counties say, what you need to look out for so that you're buying the right land and using it in the right way. So keep well. God bless you and have a good evening. Good night.